Hello everyone, my name's Ethan and this is my channel Gringo Campesino. Today I was going to talk about the difference between Colombia and Panama and a little bit in there Costa Rica. So I'll give a quick backstory. So in about the early 2010s I had left Africa in the Peace Corps and I had spent some time with my ex-girlfriend in England, and we decided to move to Central America. So I spent first year in Costa Rica, so in the early 2010s. So my experience goes back to then. Then I spent a number of years until about 2019 in Panama, 2018 maybe. And then since then I've been here in Colombia. So I do have a pretty good grasp of comparing life in Panama and Colombia. For those of you who are trying to decide which country is best for you. So I'll give you kind of a compare and contrast of the two countries. So this might help you decide what is best. So first of all, Panama obviously is much smaller. Obviously it has the canal zone, so it has that influence from part of the country more or less being owned by the US, at least under US control. So that really affects how you live in Panama because everything is fairly close. And you can fly in and out of Panama relatively cheaply. There are flights pretty much connecting everywhere in the world. So Panama has a better infrastructure as far as airline into Tocumen, into the capital city of Panama City. Outside of that, just about anywhere you want to be in the country in Panama is within about a 7-hour drive. The Interamericana is a very fast, mostly good road. You can get to the extremes really quickly. The exception to that is Bocas del Toro, which will take you possibly 12 hours drive. In contrast to that, Colombia is a very big country, full of mountains and full of open space, deserts, jungles. So the infrastructure is just not good. You cannot drive anywhere very fast. You look at the Google, their suggestions on the Google Maps will say 8 hours. You better figure 12 in some locations. But Colombia has a very good internal airline system. So you can fly between fairly minor cities for a relatively cheap price. That can be good or bad, depending on what you feel about flying. I have dogs, so I personally like to drive, so I can bring my dogs with me. I can have a car in the location I'm going. For example, if I go to Bogota, the capital city, I'd like to have my car there to visit friends and drive in different locations. You don't need that. Taxis are pretty good and simple to use. So it's really up to you. As far as the infrastructure and roads, Panama probably has better roads, and more importantly, they don't have many toll roads, except for, there might be more than this, but as far as I understand, there's only the one toll road going from Tocumen, the major airport in Panama City, to Panama City. That is the major toll road. But that's really the only toll road you will come across and use. Panama is very different from Colombia in this aspect because Colombia has toll roads everywhere. Basically, every major route that you will drive, you will be paying tolls. And the tolls range from, in US dollars, about $1.50 to about $3, depending on what section of road you're using and the distance between tolls. But get used to paying tolls, and there's no fast pass. There's no paying automatically by car and you're rolling through the toll booth. You're paying by cash, and I mean, almost all of the rural toll booths, you're paying by cash, and you're giving your cash to an actual person. So be prepared for that. It does slow down travel time, and it does make travel much more expensive. Fuel price fluctuates pretty much together. Both countries are cheaper than the US, but for local currency, it's pretty expensive. So move on to culture and the people and the culture shock you get. So I'm going to assume many of you, because I'm speaking English, will be coming from Europe or the United States, Canada, maybe Australia. Mostly very westernized countries. There is a culture shock in both countries. The way people do things is much slower, similar in many ways. However, Panama, the shops are more focused on franchises from North America. So you will have hardware stores, auto parts stores that will be connected to North American cars, North American tools, North American hardware. You can buy North American lumber, and it's mostly infrastructure based on North America. Colombia hasn't really caught up to that. There is a major home goods store called Home Center in Colombia. I believe it's Chilean. So you can get international products. You can get most of the things you want, but not all of them are American products. So there are some products that are relatively difficult to find depending on which part of the country you're in. Certain paint brands I've noticed, certain tool brands I've noticed. There's definitely not as much good quality tools. For example, if you want to build a stick frame house using drywall, you're not going to find all of the specialized tools that you would find in the US, and you can also find in Panama. I would say the people in Colombia, I prefer the people. The people are friendlier. The people, without being insulting, are a little bit more cultured. They understand a little bit more. They're a little bit better educated. And this is not to insult Panama. I really love Panama. I think Panama is a great place. However, if you're looking for an employee, you kind of have some extremes. I found it extremely difficult to find someone that was trustworthy in Panama. And I say trustworthy past like midterm trustworthy. You can find someone to work a full day. Not so hard. To find someone that will work a year and not screw you over at the end of that year starts getting more difficult. Colombia, people are much more professional. However, because of that professionalism, you have a little bit more competition. You can have a carpenter who knows what they're doing and an electrician that knows what they're doing. They'll cut corners if you need to save on money, but there's more competition. And with that becomes more long-term scams. So I have a friend who had a business down here in Colombia, really good workers to start with. After years of setting up the business, they basically used criminal elements to steal her company. In Panama, on the other hand, it's less sophisticated. I have friends who would hire a watchman, and the watchman would show up drunk, and when my friends tried to fire him, he reported them to the police, to the Ministry of Labor, and the foreigners who were hiring him had to pay him thousands of dollars in compensation. And I don't know if this is true, but in retribution, the worker actually created arson. He torched some heavy equipment. So in the short term, midterm, I would definitely trust Colombians more. I think they're a little bit more professional. You don't have to keep an eye on them 24 hours a day. But long term, you have to be careful of scams. As far as like just the general culture, I think Panamanians, I think it's through propaganda. I feel like they have a sense of being owed something. They have had the benefit of the canal for a long time. They don't really pay taxes because the canal makes a lot of money. And they kind of get this feeling that they're superior to other people in Latin America. And honestly, I don't understand why. Maybe it's just the feeling that I have, but I feel like more Colombians kind of get their station economically in the world. You know, Colombia is not an economic powerhouse. People realize that here in Colombia, and they don't expect to get the benefits of an economic powerhouse country without putting in the work. That's just my opinion. So as far as corruption and police and security, I've had Bad things happened in Panama. I had my house broken into midday. They used a crowbar, opened up the front door, stole computers, stole TV, snatch and grab, really quick. None of my neighbors saw it happen, but it was very obvious what happened. Reported it to the police. Police didn't care. Turned out they were minors. These criminal elements were using minors, so the police really didn't have any power to do anything. But the police didn't really care either. I've had some bad experience on the roads in Panama. I 100% knew I was not speeding at one point because I just had pulled onto the highway. About 200 meters down the road, I was clocked for speeding. I asked to see the radar gun. The guy wouldn't show it to me, and he wouldn't show that I was speeding. So it was his word against mine. I argued with him. Eventually, he got really angry, actually pulled his gun on me, and he brought over a superior. Long story short, it was near to Christmas. He was looking for a little extra money for Christmas. He wanted a bribe. I did not give him a bribe. I ended up paying the full fee just for my own peace of mind. I did not want to put any money into his pocket, being that he pulled his gun on me. On the other hand, in Colombia, I've noticed you cannot use strong arm tactics and confidence with Colombian police. They have been dealing with criminal elements all their life. You cannot bully a policeman in Colombia. It will not go well for you. Panama, most of the time, if I showed confidence, the police officer would back down, respect me a little bit more. In Colombia, I've noticed you have to be very submissive. That could be different for different people. Maybe it's just the way I look. I don't know. Maybe it's my accent, the way I speak Spanish. So in my small towns, I have a better relationship with Colombian police than I did in Panama. But I'll tell another story about Colombia. People are much more hesitant to get involved with something that is wrong. And I think that's the response for so many years of violence and being afraid of criminal elements. I was in a small city about 2 o'clock in the morning. I heard a very, very loud car speaker. And I went out after a few minutes to investigate because I actually thought it was next door. I walked outside, just a pair of shorts on. The car was actually about 100 meters away. So that's how loud it was at 2 o'clock in the morning. I arrived and I had all of the neighbors just looking at these people, giving him the stink eye, but nobody wanted to get involved. So me being the foreigner, me being American, different perspective, I went up and I confronted these people. And they were complete cowards, completely drunk, had no fear of them physically. However, everyone else had fear. But when I put my neck on the line, I had some younger guys back me up. The police showed up soon after. These guys were fall down drunk, had no fear of them fighting me. However, police showed up, police put them in their car, made them drive away. Found out later that these guys had some kind of criminal connection. And so basically the community was afraid of doing anything. And I was oblivious to this fact, and I went up and I confronted them. The police did not want to do anything either. So I think that is more common in Colombia, though it's a big country, there's a lot of variation. So as far as getting established, Panama, it's easier to find expats. There's less places to go. Probably you have the capital city, you have David, the second or third largest city, you have Bocas del Toro, and you have a couple other beach communities. And in these places, you will find plenty of foreigners. You will be able to mingle with expats. And usually the locals in those areas have gotten used to expats kind of running the local economy. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, but it is what it is. So in Colombia, outside of a handful of major cities, there's not a lot of expats. Where I live in my little town here, I'm the only one. I like it that way. I was looking for that. Down the road, about an hour and a half, Salento, Quindío. There are lots of expats, and I hate it there. It's a beautiful place. The extra money coming from tourism and foreign investment has upkept all the buildings. The buildings are beautiful, old style. You have some mountains that are very nice. However, I have 80% the same thing, and I don't have to deal with traffic. I don't have to deal with these foreigners coming in, changing the culture, and me being grouped in with these frequently asshole foreigners who are demanding a lot. So I personally don't want any of you to visit, or let me rephrase that. I want you to visit. I don't want you to buy land in my town because I want to stay one of the few foreigners here. I like it that way. That being said, if you want to contact me, I can help you find some area around me. There are plenty of farms available. I can give you some advice if you want to try moving down here. So I would say Colombia wins on that side. Is slightly more welcoming. Cost, I think everyone knows by now, Panama is much more expensive. Give you an example. With my ex-girlfriend, I bought a farm for about $100,000, about 6 hectares, riverside, very nice farm, zero infrastructure. Currently, that same farm is probably worth 3 times that much with some infrastructure, but let's say $40,000 infrastructure additions, but double, maybe triple in value in just the last 8 years. On the other hand, here in Colombia, I can get about the same thing, an old farmhouse, infrastructure, power, water, next to the roadside, next to a river, about the same cost as I paid 8 years ago. There's high variation in that. Again, I'm not in a place with a lot of expats. I'm not in a place overrun with tourists and with inflated costs. So be careful to make assumptions on price. It's going to vary a lot. Buying a car and buying things here, if you go to the big box stores, you're going to pay a high price. But in Colombia, you can get probably save 25% if you go to these local hardware stores, especially with the fluctuation in the dollar to the peso, which obviously that fluctuation doesn't happen in Panama because they use the dollar. The fluctuation here, I've noticed I can get a good deal because if I pay attention to the fluctuation, I can go to a big box store, which is going similar to the costs of the dollar, or I can go to a local store who's had their stock for over a year, and I can check the prices, and I can usually figure out a pretty good deal. So Colombia is better. It is much cheaper in that regard, but you can't get all of the Western products. Especially, I've noticed cheese. Cheese sucks here. I mean, you get great local cheese, but if you want to get variety of cheese, you want to get good exotic cheeses, it's going to be very expensive and hard to find in smaller cities. And then the last thing, just sheer beauty. Honestly, I leave this as a draw. Colombia is really, really large. So you have, I think it's about a third of the country is Amazon rainforest. Then if you include the Choco rainforest, that's also very large. So adding rainforest, inaccessible mountain area, half of the country people don't live in. A few more deserts, which exclude people living there. But I think both Costa Rica down through Colombia is the most biodiverse area in the world. Because as the continents met, you had species interacting and mixing together. Colombia, I think, generally speaking, is the most diverse country in the world. When we're talking about ecosystems, wildlife, plant life, people. We don't have a large Asian population, but there's a large Afro-Latino population. There's a large European descent population. There's a large population of indigenous groups, multiple. And so the people, the climate, the culture, the diversity of ecosystems and habitats, I don't think there's anywhere in the world that's equal to Colombia. So I think Colombia gets the win, but I think it's mostly because of size. Panama is incredible. There are certain places where I used to live in Panama, I could get to either ocean within 2 hours. So I was in the mountain, cool weather. Sorry, my dog's barking. Cool weather, in the mountains, get to either coast within 2 hours, maybe 2.5 to get a good beach. So Panama is very unique in that sense. Really, as far as natural beauty, I don't think you can go wrong with either country. So that was my introduction. I tried to keep it short, but it's hard to go through such a big topic in a short time. Please let me know if you have any questions. I will offer help if anyone wants to. Sorry, dogs and sheep getting involved with each other. So if anyone wants to move down here and need some advice, let me know. Just drop me a message in the comment section and I will try to respond and help you out, give you some advice. So good luck. See you next time. Thanks.